This video was made possible thanks to your donations on Patreon. So thank you ever so. Also Metatron merchandise available through Teespring. Link in the description below. Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we are addressing a very popular and interesting question. Were Roman soldiers short? Okay, so this is a very interesting topic and I'm often asked this, and you see that people attempt to answer this, but unfortunately without the actual proper academic data to back up what they're claiming. So the general idea, general belief is that Roman soldiers were all short and they were always looking up at these tremendous barbarians that were all towering over them. Okay, so before speaking about genetics, before speaking about nutrition and general health conditions and all these things, skeletal remains, we will talk about all this. But first and foremost, I'd like to underline how strange of a question were the Romans short is, because even if we just transcend from the general population and just look at the military, which I think is what people are interested in, what people misunderstand is that not all Roman soldiers were of Italian origin. It's kind of funny, but people have this general idea that Roman legions were just thousands of Italian midgets, poking the tall barbarians around, while the reality is that the Roman Empire was an incredibly international, multicultural, multi-ethnic entity. Now, to give a little bit of a temporal placement, if we look at the end of the reign of the first emperor, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus Augustus, we already have about 250,000 legionaries split into about 25 active legions across the empire. Now, that is a lot of people. Legions were raised from all over the provinces of the empire. Remember one very important thing. In the classical era, being Roman didn't mean just being someone from Rome capital. It didn't mean being someone coming from mainland peninsula Italy. It just meant being someone who was a citizen of the Roman Empire, no matter from what province you were from. So you could be a Roman from Italia, but you could also be a Roman from Narborensis, from Aquitania, Gallia Lugdunensis, to say a very important one, even Africa Proconsularis, Hispania, etc. So if you are a citizen, if you're a Roman citizen, you would be considered as equal from the point of view of an Italian Roman. To put this into perspective, and perhaps I'll make a dedicated video to Roman emperors and where they were from specifically, individually. But the majority, yes, the majority of Roman emperors were from Rome capital or somewhere around, like for example Antium, modern day Anzio. But you did have Roman emperors who were not born in the Italian peninsula. For example, since I just mentioned Gallia Lugdunensis, where Lugdunum, which is modern day Lyon in France, is where Emperor Claudius was born, in the Roman province of Gaul. Given he was of Italian origin. At the end of the day, we're talking about the grandson of the famous general Marcus Antonius, the one who had an affair with Cleopatra, famously, and Marcus Antonius was from Rome capital. But still, Claudius was born in Gaul, modern-day France. Did they care? Nobody cared. He was a Roman, full stop. So the same can be said about the Roman legionaries. As long as you were a citizen, no matter where you were from in the empire, you could be a Roman legionary. So you can understand the variation within the Roman legions in terms of DNA, in terms of genes, in terms of nutrition. So you've got Roman soldiers who are from Italy, Roman soldiers who are from Gaul, Roman soldiers who are from Hispania, Baetica, and you know what that means. There will be a massive variation in general height, weight, and generally speaking body proportions and even colors. Okay, but for those of you who are curious and you want to know, what about Italian Romans? So people originally from Rome, legions raised in Italy, how tall would they be? Well, we do have some information. So first and foremost, let's have a look at the literary sources. Vegetius tells us that in order to be, for example, a cavalryman, so an equus, you had to be at least 172. Now, it's important to say that that's the minimum requirement. So it means that you do not have cavalrymen who are under that height, but you can have cavalry, and you will have had cavalrymen who were taller than that. And again, that's not a lot shorter than modern day Italian averages. Absolutely, it's a very small difference. Now, what about heavy infantry? Well, Vegetius doesn't tell us, but from 4th century sources, we know that most likely, in order to be an infantryman, you had to be at least 168. I'm 176. So yes, I could have been a cavalryman, but I could have also been a heavy infantryman, because at the end of the day, 168 is the minimum. A lot of people think, well, 168, so they were all 168. No, that's the minimum. So you don't have people under that height if that's a requirement, but you do have people who are taller than that. So you would have had people pretty much my height, maybe a little bit shorter than me, and people taller than me. But here's another very interesting piece of information. In 66 Anno Domini, Emperor Nero decides to raise a new legion, and he creates a new very special requirement for this legion, which was that you had to be at least 6 feet tall to be a member of this legion. Now, interestingly enough, this legion was called Prima Italica. So, the fact that it's called Italica means that it was raised in Italian territory. Now, when we say legion, we're talking about 5,000 men, well, usually between 4,200 and 6,000 men, but let's say an average of 5,000 men. Was it difficult for Emperor Nero to find 5,000 Italian men at the time who were at least 6 feet tall, if not taller? No, the legion was raised quickly because it had to be sent to the east. It actually ended up not going, and they changed the situation because there was a revolt in the province of Gallia Lugdunensis, so the legion was sent there to quench the revolt, but they didn't need to, because the riot was already taken care of by the at the time governor of the territory called Germania Inferior. General public, the general Roman population would have been shorter than what modern day Italians are. But the moment we enter into the military, then you should raise that up a bit, because they had requirements given. In a moment of crisis, for example, Battle of Cannae, lots of soldiers dead. Well, in that time, probably they didn't care about requirements. If you were tough and strong, even if you were shorter, you would have been recruited, because they needed men, because they needed to get Carthaginians out of my Italy. It's not just a matter of DNA, it's not just a matter of genes, it's also a matter of nutrition, if not mostly a matter of nutrition. And again, the Roman military had access to a high carbs and high protein diet. We know for a fact that Roman legions consumed meat. We know that they brought with them animals, herds and flocks. Why? Because having animals around, even buying animals if needed, or plundering and stealing them if you were in enemy territory, was good for a Roman legion. You can use them to help you move stuff, carry stuff when needed. You can kill them for the meat. You can get the fur to produce cloaks for winter. You can use the skin to produce leather that you need for your equipment. You can use animal fat together with vegetable mineral fat to maintain the metal sections of your armor and shield and your equipment, your gear in general. So there are a lot of reasons why the legions brought with them animals, and they did have access to a pretty good and sure meal. They had their meals, they were well fed, because they were supposed to work hard and fight hard. Also, health is a very important aspect when talking about general height. And again, if you have a very unhealthy situation and people getting sick all the time, it's a big inhibitor of growth. But the Romans were quite well renowned for their water supply, water system, aqueducts, waste disposal systems. So don't imagine Romans living in very dirty situations where you get like viruses and all sorts of diseases. Also, as a last point I'd like to make, whether someone is tall or short very much depends on perspective. I've got a friend from Sweden who is almost 2 meters tall. So from his perspective, I am short. But I've also got a friend from Japan, and when I visited him, he introduced me to his grandfather, who was pretty much this tall. So from the perspective of his grandfather, I was a very tall Westerner. So even when discussing ancient Romans and asking were they tall, were they short, apart from the multi-ethnical and multicultural situation, we should also choose the point of comparison. Are they short compared to modern day Italians? Then yes, a little shorter in average, but you could get a particularly tall Roman who would tower over a particularly short, medium tall modern day Italian like me. But again, if you compare an average Italian from today and you compare him to an average Swedish or British guy or American guy, then yes, we tend to be on average shorter. But you do have very tall Italians and you do have very short Americans. Same situation back then. So do not unify everything. Do not make it into a one homogeneous situation where all Romans were dwarfs, all Romans were super short. You do need to choose specifics, like specific provinces, and choose terms of comparisons. Alright, noble ones, but I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up, and if you're still not members of this community, become a noble one. Subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Valete!